Hello everyone, this is Ankit.sharma, founder of AllIndiaSolar.in, and you are watching Navitas Solar Presents All India Solar Podcast Season 2, India's Roadmap to Net Zero. We have created a 10 episode podcast series where we have invited 10 Indian solar industry experts who will be sharing their thoughts and their opinion on why the target for net zero by 2070 is important not only for India but for the entire globe, and what kind of roadmap India can take to achieve that target. This is the very first episode where you will be meeting Mr. Durgesh Maru, who is the co-founder and director of Net Zero Pro. I strongly believe that you will be able to learn a lot of things from him, from his company, what kind of business model they do, and how they are helping the entire world to reach to the target of net zero. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe it and share it in your network so that people can understand that reaching to the target of net zero is the need of hour. This is the most important thing to do. So let's watch the episode. Hello Mr. Durgesh, welcome to All India Solar Podcast Season 2.
Hello, Ankit. Thank you for having me here.
So let's start with the very first question. The motive, the entire concept of this second season of the podcast is all about India's roadmap to net zero. We are getting to know this particular word, net zero. काफी time से हम लोग सुन रहे हैं from the last couple of years. It's buzzing around everywhere. So net zero का मतलब क्या है? What it actually means? So please let us know, sir.
The concept of net zero came from the UN Governmental Panel on Climate Change when, in its IPCC report of 2018, they found that limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius relative to the pre-industrial levels, it will require achieving global net zero emissions by 2050. It is from then that companies have started adopting net zero targets. Well, there are three important components here. Net zero involves reaching a state of no or zero accumulation of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere. So, for most of the activities that currently release carbon, it means full decarbonization, eliminating all sources of emissions. This would be the 90% effort that is needed to limit this temperature rise to 1.5 C. Well, in some cases, there are going to be some activities that are going to keep some emissions, which are often called the residual emissions. Those need to be neutralized or counterbalanced with actions that directly remove carbon from the atmosphere, so that overall balance, it results in no further accumulation of carbon in the atmosphere.
So what if companies set a net zero target by 2050 and they start getting serious about it by 2040? So what will be the effect of that?
That's a very good question. Well, global warming, scientifically, global warming is a function of cumulative accumulation of greenhouse gases. So for most of the cases, so when we are talking about the transition that is going to take 3 more decades, 30 more years until 2050, it needs to be supported by interim targets that are consistent with this scenario of temperature rise of 1.5 degrees. So there are basically two reasons. First is the physical reason. Actually, we have a very limited carbon budget. That is the maximum amount of carbon that we can put into the atmosphere before leading to a drastic global warming. This carbon budget is 400 gigatons. Currently, we are emitting close to 36 to 50 gigatons each year. So, at this pace, we are going to exhaust all of this carbon budget in 11 years. That means we have to stop emitting within 11 years, which is totally not possible. So what we need to do is we need to decrease emissions significantly so that we can extend our carbon budget until we reach a complete state of net zero by 2050. So what happens in the next 10 years is very critical to whether we are going to hit or miss the target. So this is rightly called the decade of climate action. Hence the reference that we need to halve the emissions by 2030. And that is the reason we need to have interim targets or year-on-year targets. The second is accountability. Companies can't just set targets and not do anything about it. You need to track progress and report on it to all stakeholders. Especially if you're a listed company, your financial statements and carbon statements are going to go hand in hand in your annual reports.
Okay. So India has set its target for net zero, that is by 2070. So can you let us know what's the role of Indian solar industry in this particular roadmap, and how Indian solar industry is going to support or help, or whatever we would like to say, what will be the role of Indian solar industry?
Sure. So globally, if we see, the developed countries have contributed to most of the carbon emissions till date. But this responsibility of mitigation, it is being presented as something that all need to share. So most developing countries, they feel that it is unfair that they are yet to reach the peak energy consumption per capita, and hence their emissions are actually yet to peak. For example, in the case of India, it is estimated that we will reach the peak of our emissions by 2040, whereas the US and the most of Europe, it was reached already in late 90s or 2000s. Hence, we have a much greater challenge in front of us to uplift all our people with more energy, and also to ensure that all of this energy is fossil free, that is renewable energy. Well, the focus for India will now be on increasing our share of renewables in the energy production and generation, so that eventually we are phasing down the consumption of coal and fossil fuels throughout the different sectors of our economy. And we definitely need to improve our carbon sink, that is a green cover. Among the renewable energy sources, given the kind of climate that India has, solar has the largest push. Prime Minister Modi has announced that by 2030, India will create 500 gigatons of solar capacity. Well, just to tell you the significance of this number, currently the national peak demand in India is 203 gigawatts, whereas we have a total energy electricity generation capacity of 400 gigawatts. So you can imagine this scale of solar development, where deployment, where we are talking of 500 gigawatts of solar capacity by 2030. So with this, the Prime Minister want the share of renewable energy to be in the range of 50% of our total energy mix. Now the difficulty is that the efficiency of renewables is low. So how are we going to actually uptake so much of solar energy in our energy systems, which today stands at this mix of solar stands at 10%. So the question before us is, how are we going to make this energy transition? How are we going to enhance renewables and stabilize our grid? And where is all this funding is going to come from? So even if India is able to produce intermittent renewable energy at a very low cost, there are going to be some systemic fixed costs that need to be factored in. These include the need for meeting the base load in the grid, that is the minimum level of electricity demand over 24 hours, transmitting the energy, transporting it across the different states and regions, and in case of solar, even making it available when the sun is not shining. All of this will require considerable investment in infrastructure and the systems that we have today. So the primary problem in making this transition is twofold. First, India needs to create technology for energy storage, which can meet the base load in the grid and stabilize it along with the wind energy and other sources of energy. And second, we need to mobilize this scale of finance, which can make 500 gigawatts of renewable energy possible by 2030.
Okay, that was really very insightful about what's the role of Indian solar industry in this particular India's roadmap for net zero. So I personally ask a very this particular question to all of the solar expert whom I came across, I have met, and I would like to ask the same. That is, what inspired you to venture into the solar industry? Because this is not like some kind of a fancy and very exciting industry to showcase, because we know that it's not like some kind of lifestyle business, it's not some like traveling business or something like that. It's not a fancy business. So what actually inspired you to venture into the solar industry?
Sure. So, well, since school, I've always been a hustler and wanted to be part of projects that really touch nature and humans positively. So, back in 2014, when I was doing a master's exchange program at Berkeley in California, I was really fascinated by the potential of solar energy. And as I was reading, the opportunities were really opening up in India. So this led me to start Sun Infra in 2016, and we have been growing pretty well. So I was saying that through this journey, I've realized that solar is one small part of the whole decarbonization game, and I need to do something more to catalyze this transition of our economy to net zero. For that, we really need to make companies understand and we get more clarity on their carbon footprint, so that they can plan and set right targets while tracking the progress towards this during this journey. This led me to start Net Zero Pro. After all, you can't manage what you don't measure.
Exactly. That's true. That's true. So, about Net Zero Pro, can you let us know about the business model? Like, what you are doing at Net Zero Pro and how it is impacting the entire, to be frank, MSME industry. I'm asking MSME industry because they are the major power consumers of India. So, how's Net Zero Pro is impacting
Sure.
them?
So Net Zero Pro is a software as a service platform that helps companies and institutional investors measure, report, and act on their carbon footprint and ESG performance. This solution it simplifies the entire ESG journey of these companies by the automation of data collection, analytics, and reporting in compliance with globally accepted standards and frameworks. For example, the greenhouse gas protocol is the globally accepted standard in this case, and there are different frameworks, reporting frameworks such as GRI, SASB, TCFD, and also BRSR introduced by SEBI in India. Our blockchain modeled carbon accounting ledger provides a high degree of transparency and trust for third party assurances and audit. This leads to much reduced cost of reporting and compliance, so companies can rather focus on their decarbonization journey. Our mission is to provide companies with the technology so that they can factor and embed climate and ESG into every investment, action, and decision they make.
That's great. So, in our initial conversations, when I put this particular word carbon trading, and you oppose it, like you said that the carbon trading is not good. May I know why you think carbon trading is not good? From my personal point of view, I feel like carbon credits can be used as a commodity to do the barter within the community. But what's the negative side of carbon trading?
Sure. Well, carbon trading or offsetting, I will talk about it. Offsetting occurs in two forms. First is that companies can either provide finance for technologies to remove carbon, or they can purchase carbon credits from the activities that either reduce or remove carbon. Well, it is very beneficial when companies provide finance to some of these technologies, such as direct air capture, which are really essential in removing so much of carbon out there. But these activities should not be looked at as an excuse for not acting on the emissions in your operations and value chain. So these activities like offsets or carbon credits are such that companies can do in addition to their efforts, but not use it as a substitute to reducing their own emissions.
So basically, what you're trying to say that if carbon trading comes, like people can use it as an excuse to avoid their responsibilities and get around it.
Correct. So our first priority is to reduce the emissions in your operations and value chain to the bare minimum with all the available technologies, and only for the residual emissions that are left afterwards, that one should opt for high quality offsets and carbon removal technologies. We highly recommend investing into nature-based solutions and other carbon removal technologies, but definitely not the low-quality offsets which are very cheaply available out there.
So, if we see the India's target for its power generation from renewable energy, of course, solar is one of the major shareholder, and among solar, in the last couple of years, in last 5 or 6 years, the majority of the share was from the utility grid. We know India has a lot of scope in the rooftop solar industry, but why rooftop solar is declining? This is going to impact the India's target for net zeros. But so, what could be the reasons why that rooftop solar is not growing the way utility grid is growing?
Rooftop solar is definitely one of the most important components of India's renewable story. there is a very thriving ecosystem and supply chain that has reached almost every nook and corner of the country. Now, there are many policy level issues such as lack of a single window service at the DISCOM, the misalignment between the central and the state subsidy schemes, and the price uncertainty that has caused a slowdown, a temporary slowdown in its uptake. But nevertheless, there has been an active feedback mechanism of the present government, which is helping our voices reach the decision makers. And I also believe that the MNRE's national portal for rooftop solar it is a great step towards simplifying most of these challenges. Finally, a single window service at the DISCOM level and the accountability towards the grievance redressal is definitely going to help further strengthen these efforts.
So, India in 2018 or maybe, yeah, 2018, India projected one of the most visionary projects of entire human civilization, that is one sun, one world, one grid. I mean, to be frank, thinking to that particular level is out of the scope of many organizations. But someone in MNRE thought of it and they developed the entire model, and now, ISA is working on it. But the question is, can India pull this project, and can this be happen? Like, can this be
Sure.
done?
Well, Ankit, the One Sun, One World, and One Grid is a great initiative of these officials from MNRE who ultimately brought this up at the International Solar Alliance, and India and the UK they initially collaborated on it, but now have been joined by a number of countries. We definitely need a worldwide grid wherein clean energy can be generated and transmitted across various time zones. This should work out. I believe this should work out as the available technology and know-how is already there. If we have done it for the internet in the past, then why not energy? It shouldn't be a hassle as well. Fossil-free energy is a common denominator that cuts across the borders and geopolitical understandings. So I have no doubt that cross-border understanding shall be reached and we can together make it happen.
I truly believe in that, but at the end of the day, from the viewer's point of view, I was supposed to ask this
Sure.
question. So, thank you, sir, for sharing all this information with us. Because India's roadmap for net zero, that's 2070, and 2070 is, there's a lot of time, and at that particular time we would be very old, and at that particular time, the one who are in the schools, or maybe one who have not even born, they would be the one who will be seeing this. Okay, was India able to take this particular journey? Was India able to take the right steps? And I believe through the information you have shared, our viewers will be very much conscious, and they would start thinking about the right step to be taken for India's target for net zero. So thank you for sharing all this information with us.
Thank you very much, Ankit. I really appreciated the efforts that you have put into creating this platform of All India Solar. We are going to need a number of solar champions to steer India onto this journey of net zero to 2070, and in fact, much beyond that. I'm sure we are going to reach net zero much before 2070. And
Thank you, sir. So I would ask you to repeat after me: Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Suryavan.
Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Suryavan.